Okay, UFC 271, Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker. A fight that I've been looking forward to probably from the moment their first fight ended, because I just knew that Whittaker, he would be back. I think these two are clearly the two best guys in the middleweight division. Nobody really comes close, to be honest. Costa's good, Vittori's good, Brunson, Kanye, they're all good fighters, but I feel like these two are the same way Usman and Covington are the two best guys at welterweight by a distance. I think the same for these two. This whole card in general is quite interesting to me. When I googled this card a while ago, not because I didn't know who was on it, but just to sort of see the order of it, and for some reason it had Lewis and Tuivasa at the time and Brunson and Kanye right at the bottom, so it looked weird, this card, for a second. But yeah, this card is interesting. It's not the best, but there's always some interesting fights. In the prelims, there aren't really many fights that stand out to me. You got Orlovsky fine as the headline prelim, but again, nothing really to scream about that much. The main fights, I mean, you got Bobby Green fighting as well, but I still think there's not really much to completely go on about, but there's some decent matchups in here. But obviously, I think the main ones are the last three: the Adesanya Whittaker fight, the Lewis Tuivasa fight, and the Kanye Brunson fight. So they're the three fights that I want to focus on here. So the first one, we'll talk about the Jared Kanye and Derek Brunson fight. Another fight in the middleweight division. A fight that, in fairness, whoever wins this possibly could get the next title shot. You look at, first of all, let's look at Derek Brunson. He's on a 5 fight win streak. His last win obviously was a big one against Darren Till. Before that, he beat Kevin Holland, beat Shabazian, beat Ian Heimich, beat Elias Fedorov. So some really decent wins on here, to be honest. And if he can beat Canada, this really would be, I think, the one that has to get the title shot. And to be honest, this middleweight division seems to be just giving Adesanya loads of rematches. We want to see new matchups for, I mean, obviously Whittaker could win the fight, but we want to see new matchups for Adesanya. He's a great fighter and a fantastic middleweight, but we need to see something new. But if Brunson wins this, you can't deny him the shot. And looking at it, this fight, it's a hard one, this one, because with Brunson, he's made a brilliant sort of resurgence recently. Obviously, his last loss actually was to Adesanya, and that was a loss that was as decisive a loss as I think I've ever seen. It was essentially just wrestling practice for Adesanya, and then he ended up finishing the fight in brilliant fashion, to be honest with you. And that was the one fight that really sort of told me what Adesanya was. But with Brunson, since then, he's gone on a pretty good tear, and in fairness, he's kind of mixed it up. It hasn't just been all decisions. He had 3 decisions and 2 finishes. Obviously, his last one was a rear naked choke against Darren Till. And in that fight, the thing with Brunson, he kind of is what he is. He isn't like he's reinvented himself or he's done something completely different. It's not like he did what Francis did when he fought Cyril Gane, where everybody thought he would knock him out if he was going to win, but he turned into an African Khabib. He's pretty much now what he's always been. It just seems like he owns it a bit more. He isn't trying to be anything that he's not. He's a wrestler, a very good wrestler, but his striking isn't that great. There was moments in that fight where Darren Till did have him in trouble, but he pretty much coasted through that fight. It was a pretty easy fight for him, to be honest with you. And then if you look at Kanye, now Kanye is somebody who I really thought after, when he was fighting Robert Whittaker, I thought that if he won that fight, obviously he would have fought for the belt, but I really thought he would win that fight. But it surprised me almost how he lost that fight. He didn't just lose that fight. He got completely outclassed. But obviously, he lost that fight to Whittaker. Then he fought Gaslam. So it's essentially a 1-fight streak he's on. But Gaslam still isn't a joke. And it was a pretty close fight in the fight against Gaslam. And again, this is why I say Whittaker and Izzy are the two guys who are just clear. Because even though Izzy did go to life and death with Gaslam, he still won the fight pretty convincingly. And same with Rob. He, again, outclassed Gaslam in that fight. Whereas Kanye, it wasn't that easy for him. But I do like Kanye. I think he's somebody who seems to be he almost gets better and better the lower down he goes in weight. So once he goes down to lightweight or something, he's going to be damn near unbeatable, I'm pretty sure. In this fight, I think, like we said, Brunson's the wrestler, so he's going to use that. But honestly, Kanye is no joke on the ground. I mean, this is a guy who openly spoke about how much he loves jiu-jitsu, and I don't know, I really feel like the more and more I look at this fight, I just sort of look at Kanye. I do think this is his fight to lose, to be honest, because if I look at, again, Brunson is what he is. He is literally just a guy who goes in there, takes you down, and will dominate you that way. Not the same, but a little bit similar to how Vittori does it. And I don't have a problem with it. You know, you have to, like I said, own what you are. But I don't know, on the feet, I feel like Kanye just got a huge advantage. And in the fight against Robert Whittaker, I say he lost it decisively. He did have some good moments with the calf kicks. And again, maybe if he just tightened that up a bit, maybe it wouldn't have been as one-sided. But yeah, I think Kanye will take this one, though. I think he's got enough in the tank to take it. I think on the feet, he's got the advantage. And I think even grappling, I mean, if you look at physically, the difference between the two of them, I mean, Kanye is an absolute tank. And Brunson's in great shape as well, but man, there's just something about Kanye where he's just a big guy. And I said this previously in my last video about Anthony Joshua, that there's guys who are like, and there's middleweights and there are middleweights in this weight class. You look at Yoel Romero, I know he's not here anymore, but he was just an absolute tank. And Kanye is the same. Yeah, I think physically in the clinch, I feel like he'll just have the advantage. I could be wrong. I could see Brunson taking this, but I feel like Kanye should take it. So I'm going to go with a Kanye decision victory in this one. And then if we look at the next fight, Derek Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa. This one, actually, I'm probably almost looking forward to this more than I am almost for the main event. Because if I look at Derek Lewis, same as I said about Brunson, he is what he is. He knows that he ain't a great grappler. He ain't someone who's going to take you down and try to submit you. He's not going to have a kickboxing point match with you. He's going to go in there and try to take your head off. To his credit, if you actually look at his record, more often than not, it actually works. If you actually go back a bit, if you actually go from the Travis Brown fight, he obviously knocked out Travis Brown. He then got knocked out by Mark Hunt. He then beat Hoibura. He then got that weird win over Ngannou. Then knocked out Volkov. Then obviously he lost to DC, lost to JDS. And then he beat Ivanov. Then he beat Latifi by decision. He then beat Oleinik by knocking him out. Beat Curtis Blade by knocking him out. I lost to Cyril Gane, obviously. And then his next fight against Chris Dukas. These names, honestly, my pronunciation just ain't there. And he knocked him out. So it's like, honestly, he's just an example of a guy who just get beat every second of the fight, but he'll just come up big with something. And if you look at Tuivasa, not exactly the same, but his record, not the same, but it's somewhat similar in a way. You know, you look at, he beat Coulter with the flying knee. He then beat Cyril Asker with an elbow, which knocked him out. Then beat Orlovsky via decision. Then also had a 3-fight losing streak to JDS, Ivanov and Spivak. Then he beat Stefan Struve by knocking him out. Then same with Huntscourt. Then same with Greg Hardy. And then Augusto Sakai, the same one, he knocked him out. So he's been on a good streak as well. So this genuinely, and if you actually look at the Greg Hardy fight, he got rocked in that fight, or it seemed like he got rocked anyway. And then he caught Greg Hardy coming in. And yeah, he probably maybe won the most memorable thing on that Poirier, because it was on the McGregor Poirier free card, and that probably may have been the most memorable thing on that card. So I would probably say this is honestly a toss. So I'll go with Lewis, because Lewis does have that touch of death, which Tuivasa hits hard, but there's hitting hard, and then there is just some people just have that crazy, like Ngannou has it, Deontay Wilder has it, back in the day Ernie Shavers had it. Some guys, they can just hit you and you just die. He's just caught that in him. I'll say I think Derek Lewis takes this by via second round KO. I feel like it will be a little bit like what happened with Tuivasa knocked out Greg Hardy, but it'll be the other way around, where I feel like they'll start swinging, and essentially when you've got two guys swinging, one of them, you're kind of going to see who has that big power, and not just the power but the timing. And Lewis, he gets a lot of things for just being a big guy. He knows people have his power, but he also has and people underestimate this, but he has a real sort of killer instinct about him. When he has you hurt, he just does not let up, and I think that will be the deciding factor. And I think he takes this one. So yeah, I think Derek Lewis via second round KO, and he catches Tuivasa coming in. And then we get to the main event. Like I said, a fight that I was looking forward to for a while. A fight that probably should have happened a bit before this. Probably should have happened when Izzy fought Vettori, but you know, we know how these politics are. But yeah, Adesanya Whittaker. This fight is, like I said, it's a good. I love this fight because it is. I do love it when you can clearly see there are two guys in the division who are head and shoulders above everybody. I think Ngannou and Cyril Gane was the same. Usman Covington was the same. In the first fight, so my whole feelings towards... We'll start with Adesanya. My whole feelings towards Adesanya coming into the first fight, I was always a bit of a fan of Adesanya when he came into the UFC, because I have a thing for fighters who... I don't know, my favourite fighter, not now because he ain't fighting anymore, but was John Jones. And I like guys who have that sort of... I don't know, that sort of long build, who kind of... are quite exciting to watch. And Anderson Silva was the same. You know, guys who kind of just have that range, but they know what to do with it. They have different techniques, and Adesanya really excited me. And you know, he had a lot of hype coming into it, but he was a guy who I feel like maybe Chimaev might be another thing that plays, but guys who are hyped up usually just don't live up to it. But Adesanya lived up to it, and after that fight with Gastelum, he showed that he not just can live up to it, but he can also give it and take it. And I think that was the fight, I think, that showed a lot of people that Adesanya was for real. But into the Whittaker fight, I did not know what was going to happen, because Whittaker literally had to go through a death row of killers, you know, before fighting Adesanya. Like, if we go on to Robert Whittaker's record here, obviously, before he fought Adesanya the first time round. So, but before he fought Adesanya, right, he fought Uriah Hall, Rafael Natal, Derek Brunson, Jacare Souza, had to fight Yoel Romero twice, which that in itself is just all kinds of mad. And then obviously for Adesanya lost. So the middleweight has always been a division where sometimes maybe the talent isn't always looked to it, but he has a hell of a lot of dangerous guys in it. And Whittaker really, in them 2 Yoel fights especially, I mean, I thought he lost the second one, but he showed though that that man is just tough as anything. But in the Adesanya fight, so coming into it, I really was torn who I thought would win it. I didn't know who I wanted to win either. I really liked Adesanya. I felt like, I don't know, I have this thing, I like his story, how he came up, but it was hard to dislike Robert Whittaker, but in the end, I kind of felt like Whittaker would take it, and I'll be honest with it, because as a champion, he's been through all that, but man, as I rate Adesanya, but even I was surprised how easy he made that look. And Adesanya, he's a very flashy guy, the way he fights, but people almost underestimate how ruthless and how like cold he can be in there. I mean, I kind of felt like, to be honest, he was going to win. I almost wanted him to win as soon as he did that walkout with the dancers and stuff, because that, any man who has the confidence in the biggest fight will have to do all that. Like I said, it's just scary. And yeah, so again, we'll open up with Israel. Israel, since winning the belt, has gotten a pretty good run, as we all know. Beating Romero, beating Costa, lost to Blachowicz, which, you know, he went up in weight, but it is what it is. And the last fight, obviously, beat Vettori. And it's funny, because if you actually look at since he won the belt, if you look at middleweight specifically, the Romero fight was weird. You can't deny it. I don't know what the hell happened in that fight. People blame Romero for that solely, but, you know, Adesanya didn't do that much either. But it was a weird fight, to be honest, so I can't really delve that much into it. But the Costa fight, I'll be honest with you, my sort of understanding of fighting told me that Adesanya should win the fight, but I just had a feeling that Costa may do something big and knock him out. But I'll be honest, he got absolutely just picked apart and destroyed, and it was probably one of my favourite performances I've ever seen from a fighter. If you just look at like Dan Hardy's breakdown of that fight, it just shows you how layered Adesanya's strike is, and everything has something behind it. You know, he's almost like he's 2 or 3 steps ahead every single time, and I think that's the fight that made everybody realize how good Izzy actually is. The reason, and I think people get this twisted, a lot of people say that, you know, the blueprint is there now to beat Adesanya. All you got to do is take him down, do what Blachowicz did. But it's almost as if, you know, we're going hypotheticals here, but if you look, let's just say if, I don't know, McGregor knocked out Khabib when they fought with a 1 in 100 type shot, and people would just say, oh, that's all you need to do to beat Khabib is to do what McGregor did. But not everybody's Conor McGregor, and in the same sense, not everybody's Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz is a very good grappler who has stinging knockout power, regardless of that last fight against Glover. Man's a dangerous guy, and you look at everything he throws has power behind it. There's kicks, his punches. I mean, you got to look at the Reyes fights. Look at Reyes' body after the first round. It looks horrible. And I think the threat of the knockout is why he was able to mix in the wrestling and grappling so well. And I forget how I scored. I think I had it like 4-1 Blachowicz, but I think Adesanya almost underestimated, not specifically underestimated Blachowicz, but underestimated how hard it would be going up weight against a bigger guy. And the issue he has that people have now is everybody thinks that's the way to beat him. That's what they said about Vettori. All you got to do is, you know, do what Blachowicz did, just out-grapple him. But it's not as simple as that, because Vettori could not strike anywhere near as well and hasn't got the knockout power of Blachowicz. And whilst he's a very good grappler, Vettori, he just isn't as big as Blachowicz. You can't use his size to almost tire Adesanya out, which is what Adesanya said happened. He said that his legs were tired at the end of the fight. And a lot of that, I think, was down to also, and this is something that Blachowicz deserves credit for, Adesanya is known for chopping at the legs. He did such a good job, Blachowicz, of checking all of his kicks virtually. If you look at the fight, I'm pretty sure somebody put out there where it showed all the kicks that were checked by Blachowicz, and he did a great job in that fight. And now people are almost using that still, even though after the Vettori fight, as an almost thing of saying to with Whittaker, that's all he needs to do. All he needs to do is out-grapple him. Uses striking the feet. Now, I'll be honest, it's more plausible for Whittaker to do that than it is for Vettori, because Whittaker is a better striker than Vettori, but it's still a tough ask. If you are asking to completely replicate someone else's game plan and use it against Izzy, because he tried to do that with the first fight. He saw the Kelvin Gastelum fight and he just kept trying to rush in, and what happened is, I think he underestimated how quickly Adesanya can learn. And Adesanya is, I think, the best example of a guy who he gets better virtually every single fight, and it feels like he really is someone who learns from his mistakes. And so I don't know. I put on a comment on the Dan Hardy's breakdown or preview of this fight and said that, to me, Whittaker's almost at a catch-22 in this fight, because on one hand, if he rushes in like he did the first time, Adesanya will do the exact same thing. He'll read his movements early on, and what he did with Whittaker is he essentially, look at the two knockdowns that he got, he walked him onto essentially both of them. And the first one was a beautiful counter where, I think it was the right hook that almost got him, or was the left hook, I forget. And then in the second knockdown, which was a knockout, where he used those sort of like pullback left hooks that he used the same thing on Costa. And he essentially, because Whittaker was jumping in so much, he was able to time him perfectly. And again, that's why most guys since then haven't tried to jump in at Adesanya, because you look how easy he dispatched of him. It kind of just shows you, like I said, that there's levels when it comes to striking. There's levels when it comes to all aspects of MMA, whether it's striking, whether it's grappling, whether it's wrestling, whether it's your bottom game, top game, everything's got layers and levels to it. So I don't know. This is a tough one, I think, for Whittaker. If you look at Whittaker since he lost to Adesanya, he's done a great run and he deserves this fight. Beat Darren Till via decision, beat Cannonier via decision, beat Gastelum decision, and look, Till and Cannonier alone could have got him the shot. The fact he beat Gastelum as well, and he was going to fight Costa. I think he would have beaten Costa, to be honest, but he literally went through all sorts to try and get this rematch. And the thing with him, he hasn't really sort of reinvented himself. Not that he needed to, because he was doing great before, but he hasn't shown that much different to me, and that is why I'm going to go with Adesanya in this one. As much as I like Whittaker, and I wouldn't mind I don't really care who wins this fight, not in the sense that I don't care, but I like both of these guys. People don't like Adesanya, but the way he fights, he will be remembered as one of the greatest, in my opinion. Whether he'll be remembered as the greatest middleweight, we'll have to see, because Anderson Silva still has something to say about that, but he's one of the greatest. And Whittaker is just a hair behind him, but I think what will happen in this fight, I do think Whittaker will do quite well. Honestly, this is going to sound crazy. I wouldn't be shocked if he actually rocks Adesanya in this fight. I could see it. The way he kind of throws that 1-2 and then a head kick, I could see, because Adesanya does that to sort of move back out of strikes, and I could see Whittaker meeting him with that. Remember Gastelum caught him with a similar thing, but yeah, I can't see. Whittaker's going to have to be perfect in this fight, and I just feel as if he may be doing good, but Adesanya is just always going to be a step ahead of him, and I feel like he'll get to a point in the fight where he may get a bit desperate, Whittaker, if he's losing the stand-up, and will try to jump in again, and I can just see the same thing happening. And when you had a guy who knocked him out as brutally, I mean, that image of Adesanya sort of laying Whittaker out and him celebrating and Whittaker looking all bloody, that's got to play on Whittaker's mind, the mental thing, that this is a guy who outclassed you and knocked you out. So yeah, I'm going to go with an Adesanya win, and if he wins this, people saying, could he be the middleweight GOAT? I don't think so, but honestly, he's up there as one of the best, to be honest. But yeah, I could see Whittaker win this, to be honest. I just think it's going to be a hard one for him. I think he's going to have to do everything perfect. And I just think it's his kryptonite. The same way Jones was DC's kryptonite. I just don't know. That again, Whittaker's going to have to be perfect, and I think Adesanya is just all wrong for him, to be honest. So yeah, I'm going to say an Israel Adesanya. I'm going to say a 4th round stoppage. I could see him get a decision, to be honest, but I do feel like he'll get the stoppage. I think there will come a point where Whittaker gets desperate, and I could just see him swooping in with those lead hooks that he loves to throw and leaving himself open for an uppercut, and maybe or one of those like sort of pullback hooks that Adesanya likes. And yeah, I think Israel Adesanya retains the belt, making it a 4th straight title defense for him. So yeah, Adesanya wins, and that's my predictions for UFC 271. I'll do a video after the pay-per-view recapping all that's happened, and yeah, I will catch you all next time.